Enjoy the water, Grandma. Rena's voice was low, almost playful, like she was teasing a child. And then her hands hit my chest. There was no time to scream, no chance to catch myself. One moment, I was standing at the rail, the wind tugging at my sweater. The next, I was airborne. The world tilted. I saw the white curve of the yacht mason's face unmoving behind her shoulder and the vast, dark Pacific waiting below. The impact was like hitting concrete. Cold. So cold. I sank fast. The weight of shock held me under longer than gravity ever could. When I finally kicked to the surface, choking and gasping, the yacht had already moved. It drifted forward slowly, its engines humming, like nothing had happened. No one shouted for me. No ropes. No alarms. Just silence. I treaded water salt, stinging my eyes. I screamed his name. Mason. My voice cracked. Mason. He didn't look back. He stood near the edge, a drink still in his hand. And he smiled. A practiced, distant smile I had never seen on my son before. The kind that doesn't reach the eyes. The kind you wear when you've already decided someone no longer matters. I stayed afloat, watching the boat vanish into the distance. My heart wasn't breaking, it was unraveling. All those years. All those sacrifices. And for what I knew the answer. The trust had gone live 2 weeks ago. $1 billion secured in clauses and codes I had designed to protect our family's future. I thought I was giving them freedom. I hadn't realized I was handing them motive. I turned slowly in the water, searching the horizon for anything landlight salvation. But all I saw was black water stretching to every edge of the world. This wasn't an accident. It was an execution, but I wasn't dead yet. And if I made it out of this water alive, they'd never see me coming. Not until it was too late. The first time I held a welding torch, I was 19, covered in grease, and pretending I wasn't terrified. I had lied about my age to get the job. Offshore rigs didn't hire girls like me, too skinny, too smart-mouthed, too damn stubborn. But I kept showing up, and after a while they stopped trying to send me home. Mason was 3 when I got certified. I used to rock him to sleep in the backseat of my truck between shifts. There were nights I couldn't afford milk, so I gave him watered-down oatmeal and told him it was special night cereal. He smiled anyway. He always smiled back then. I studied by flashlight textbooks open on the hood of my pickup while he slept in a blanket beside me. I worked through trade school, then community college, then finally Oregon Tech, paying my way with busted knuckles and cheap coffee. I built things with my hands before I ever built anything with code. The startup came years later. A clean energy software system designed to optimize fuel flow in remote construction zones. It was clunky at first. Ugly and raw, but it worked. I named it HarrowCore. I named it after me. By the time I was 59, I had a team of 60 engineers, 4 patents, and a quiet office near the water. I sold the company after one final deal, $1 billion straight to my account. I didn't want a legacy. I wanted peace. So I set up the trust. Mason would be the main beneficiary. I added clauses to protect the assets. If anything happened to me, the fund would auto-transfer. No lawyers, no red tape, just clean succession. Efficient. Safe. I thought I was building a gift. I thought I was giving them something I never had. Security, freedom, family wealth. But sitting alone in the ocean that night, pressing against my skin like a second drowning, I saw it for what it was. Not a gift, a trigger. And I began to wonder, did I build a fortune? Or a weapon they would use against me? Rena had called it a surprise. Just a little celebration, she said, smiling too wide over Sunday coffee. We've all been so stressed, and you never take time for yourself. I'd just signed the final activation clause on the trust the week before. It wasn't public yet, but Rena always seemed to know things before she was told. She was good at that reading, a room, reading a man. It's a cruise, she said. sliding the brochure across the table. Just us three. A private yacht. No crew except the captain and one chef. Quiet, elegant, intimate. My fingers rested on the brochure, but I didn't pick it up. Something in me tugged back. It's hurricane season, I said, quietly. I'm not much of an ocean person. That's exactly why it's perfect, Mason chimed in, walking in from the hallway. Come on, Mom. You've been busting your ass your whole life. You deserve something nice. His tone was light, but there was insistence in it, the kind I hadn't heard from him since he was a teenager. When I looked at him, I saw the curve of his father's jaw, the same deep-set eyes. But I also saw something harder now, less familiar. He crouched beside me and nudged the brochure toward me again. Please, he said softer now, let us do this for you. You've done everything for everyone. Let us give you something back. I nodded slowly. I wanted to believe him, but later that night, I sat by the fireplace, the invitation still open on the counter, and I let my memory drift. Mason at 10. Scuffed knees, tears on his face after falling off his bike. You're my favorite person in the world, he'd sobbed into my chest. I had held him like something precious. He had believed it, and I had believed him. But standing on that yacht days later, staring into his silent smile as I fell toward the sea, I felt the sharp cut of the truth. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being his favorite. The yacht was called the Azure Pearl. Rena kept calling it our little escape. Everything she did was wrapped in ribbons, her tone, her smile, the way she touched my arm at breakfast, like we were suddenly best friends. She poured my coffee before I could reach for the pot. She brought me a cardigan before sunset, like I couldn't tell when I was cold. Mason didn't say much. He let her play hostess while he busied himself with logistics, helping the crew organizing the itinerary, checking in with the captain, and my pills. I kept my medication in a labeled pouch, in the room nothing major, just heart pressure and the occasional sleep aid. I noticed him unzipping the pouch one evening when he thought I was asleep. His hand hesitated just long enough over the bottles before he zipped it back up. I said nothing. The next morning, I felt slow. My body moved like it was under wet sand. I kept blinking at the light, my hands trembling when I tried to lift my cup. Rena noticed. You okay, Celine? Her voice was syrupy, sweet. You look pale. I'm just tired, I mumbled. Mason appeared at my side instantly. You need air. Come on, let's get you on deck. They flanked me, one on each side, gripping my elbows with a gentleness that felt too practiced. I stumbled once, and Rena laughed lightly. Careful, Grandma. The sky was beautiful, too beautiful. Cotton clouds and a calm stretch of sea that looked almost painted. They stopped near the edge of the deck. Mason let go of my arm. Rena didn't. She leaned in, brushing imaginary hair from my cheek. Her voice dropped the same tone she used in the kitchen the week before. Enjoy the water, Grandma. Then she shoved. The rail caught my hip, but not enough to hold me. I fell. And Mason just watched. No shout. No flinch. Just silence. As the water closed around me, cold and final, I kicked upward with everything I had. Because if this was how they tried to end me, then I would make sure it wasn't the end. The cold hit harder than the fall. It snatched the breath from my lungs and stole my thoughts before I could grab hold of them. I kicked to the surface, coughing up salt and betrayal, then flipped onto my back to float. It was instinct. Something deeper than fear, older than logic. I remembered Mason at 7 screaming in shallow water. I'll sink, he'd cried, arms flailing. You won't, I'd said, slipping behind him. Trust the water. It holds you if you know how to float. I stayed in the water with him for hours that day, steadying him until he realized he could save himself. Now I was the one drifting, staring up at a moon smeared with clouds. I let my body stretch out, conserving energy. I had prepared for this. Not consciously, but somewhere beneath all the years and code and caution, I had learned how to protect myself. My hand found the seam at my waistband. I reached beneath the fabric and pressed down hard. The tracker clicked once. I felt the faint buzz through my skin, the GPS beacon activating. A last resort. A quiet insurance policy stitched into my clothes after the trust was finalized. No one knew about it. Let them believe I was gone. Let them exhale too soon. The hours passed. My legs burned, my fingers numbed, but I kept moving in small, steady motions. Just enough to stay afloat. Near dawn, I spotted a shape on the water, a pale blur drifting nearby. I swam toward it, heart thudding, and found a cushion. A yacht cushion. Probably knocked loose during the scuffle. It wasn't much, but it kept my arms above water. I clung to it and prayed. I must have drifted into a fishing path because hours later I heard a motor. A voice. Spanish. A small boat pulled alongside me. Two men leaned over, one shouting for help as they grabbed me by the arms. The last thing I saw before I blacked out was the name painted on the hull, Lucero del Mar. When I woke, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I woke in a dim room with clean sheets and the scent of salt still clinging to my skin. The fishermen had brought me to a coastal village, quiet off-grid, the kind of place where strangers didn't ask questions if you paid in cash and kept to yourself. For 2 days, I didn't speak unless I had to. I ate what they brought me. I slept with the door locked. I listened to the ocean, and I waited for the weight in my chest to settle. On the 3rd day, I walked into a tiny internet cafe and used a public terminal. No logins, no trace. I opened a burner email account and sent one line to the only person I trusted with my name. Maribel Lock the Claws. Prep the estate. S. Maribel had been my assistant for nearly a decade. I'd saved her career once, and she never forgot. She didn't need explanation, just direction. I knew she'd move fast, clean, and silent. Back in the room, I turned on the small television mounted above the dresser and flipped through channels until I found a U.S. news network. The footage made my jaw tighten. There was Mason standing on the marina in San Diego, his arm around Rena as reporters swarmed. His voice cracked on cue. We woke up and she was just gone. Rena dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, every inch the grieving daughter-in-law in her pearls and cream blouse. We think she fell overboard in the night. She'd been tired. She wasn't herself. They spoke like they cared. Like I hadn't seen their eyes the moment before I hit the water. Like I hadn't felt their hands leave my body. I watched until the broadcast ended, then muted the TV. It was almost funny, the way grief looks when it's scripted. How do you mourn someone you've just murdered? I sat back in the chair, wrapped the blanket tighter around my shoulders, and opened a fresh page in the notebook I'd bought from the village market. It was time to start planning their inheritance. Maribel didn't waste time. Within 48 hours of my message, she found the first forged signature mine on a revised will submitted to probate court. Then came the fake death certificate stamped and dated within 2 days of my disappearance. Too fast, too smooth, too planned. They hadn't even waited for a body. Just filed the papers and started spending. Rena moved faster than I expected. Withdrawals from the main estate fund hit the 7-figure mark. Jewelry, renovations, a new car under Mason's name. They weren't just grieving, they were celebrating. That was the moment I stopped mourning. I stopped feeling anything soft. I called Julian Easton, the lawyer who helped me sell. Harrow Core. He was blunt and slow to trust, which made him perfect. "You're legally dead, Celine," he said after my first burner call. "That makes you a ghost. But ghosts have rights if they document them properly." Next, I looped in someone I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, Vanessa Tran, my late husband's sister. She was the only one in Mason's bloodline who had never asked me for $1. Vanessa met Maribel quietly. Within days, she had secured the property deed files and initiated internal alerts on every title transfer. She was also the one who got me the footage grainy security cam captures from the estate's backup system. Mason and Rena rifling through my office, carrying out sealed envelopes. One showed Rena waving a document in the air, grinning. It wasn't grief. It was victory. Julian filed an anonymous injunction freezing the estate account under suspicion of fraud. Maribel locked the home's smart system from a secure terminal. Vanessa rerouted utilities to a holding company registered in my maiden name. Every move we made was quiet, measured. No headlines, no emails, no digital trails. Let them think they'd won. Let them get comfortable. If silence was my weapon, I had to choose when to strike. But first, I had one more ghost to visit. I returned home on a Thursday night. No fanfare, no front gate. I used the old service entrance Mason never bothered to have rekeyed. It had stuck for years unless you lifted the handle just right. I still remembered. Inside the house smelled wrong, like someone else's perfume, someone else's taste. Rena's touch was everywhere. The art was gone, replaced with mirrors and velvet. My coffee machine was missing, but the bones were mine. I moved through each room with a quiet familiarity. The only thing I carried was a black velvet box, small, square, and heavy in the hand. I placed it on the dining table. Then I lit candles, poured 3 glasses of wine, and set the table with the fine china. They didn't know I kept locked in a different cabinet. The chandelier above the table still hummed softly when dimmed. I adjusted the light until the crystal caught the stems of the wine glasses. Next, I turned on the sound system. Jazz. The same Miles Davis record Mason used to hum to when he did homework at the kitchen counter. The same one I played at his high school graduation dinner. I let it fill the space. Then I waited. I watched them arrive through the hallway cameras, laughing, sunburned, dragging 2 monogrammed suitcases behind them. Rena opened the door first. She paused, brow furrowed. The lights were on. The music floated out like a memory. Mason stepped inside. He looked around, slow, confused. Then they saw the table. 3 places. Wine. Candles. Rena stiffened. Did you leave someone here? She asked him. Her voice had an edge now. I didn't, Mason said low. He reached for his phone. And that's when I stepped out from the hallway. Same clothes I wore the night they shoved me into the ocean. Hair pulled back. Calm. Hello, I said. They froze. Rena's hand flew to her mouth. Mason dropped his phone. I stepped toward the table and gestured to the gift box in the center. I've been waiting, I said. Have a seat. And I smiled because ghosts don't knock. Mason didn't move. His hands were limp at his sides, shoulders tight with disbelief. Rena took a step back like I might vanish again if she blinked hard enough. I brought something back from the sea, I said, quietly, resting my hand on the velvet box. Their eyes dropped to it. I opened the lid. No one spoke. The first item was a waterproof recorder, black scratched but intact. I pressed play. Rena's voice spilled out, hushed and cruel. Just keep her drowsy. We'll say she slipped. Then Mason's voice. She signed it. We're set. Once she's gone, everything moves. Rena flinched. The second item was a printed email chain, each message time-stamped and highlighted. I slid them across the table. Mason looked away, jaw clenched. Rena reached for one and paused. Her name was all over it. So was his. The third item was my will, the real one. And next to it, the version they submitted to probate court. I'd circled the forged signatures. Red ink. The sloppiness was insulting. Finally, the fourth item. 2 arrest warrants, signed, sealed, already filed. I leaned back in my chair, studying their faces. Rena looked pale. Mason looked gone. like someone had emptied him out from the inside and left only the shell standing. "You were always so certain I'd disappear," I said. "You never stopped to imagine what might happen if I didn't." Rena opened her mouth. Closed it. Her eyes filled. "Celine, I don't," I said flatly. "You saved your best lies for the cameras." That's when the sirens flashed outside the window. I hadn't called them tonight. Maribel had. The front door opened. Uniforms entered. Rena broke first, collapsing into sobs, babbling words no one could understand. Mason didn't speak. He didn't blink. When they took his hands behind his back, he didn't resist. They never asked me why. Not once. Not even as they were led out into the dark. And I stood alone in my dining room wondering which loss they'd feel more, the money or me. The wind was sharp off the Oregon cliffs, but I didn't mind. Maribel handed me a paper cup of coffee, black, just how I take it, and we stood in silence, staring at the water below. I held a bundle of red roses in one hand, 10 stems bound with twine. One for each decade I had carried Mason in my body, in my arms, in my heart. I let the wind take the first one. It dropped into the surf without a sound. The second followed. Then the third. We didn't speak. There wasn't much left to say. Mason had been sentenced last month. 25 years for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Rena got 14. I didn't attend the trial. Julian and Maribel handled the press, the filings, the aftermath. I stayed home and watered my garden. I watched the 4th rose tumble down the rocks. When I hit the 5th, I felt my throat tighten. He was 5 when he made me a birthday card out of macaroni and printer paper. He was 15 when he begged me to let him go to a summer camp 3 states away, promising he'd call every night. He didn't. I dropped the 6th rose. I didn't keep the house. Too many rooms that remembered me before I drowned. Instead, I bought a quiet home up the coast. No gates, no marble, just windows that face the sea. The 7th rose drifted on the current. I created a foundation in silence. The Hollow Root Fund. It helps women buried by their own families financially, legally, emotionally. It funds escape therapy shelter. Names are optional. Stories are private. The check always clears. I let the 8th and 9th go together. Maribel reached for my hand as I held the last one. This was the hardest to release the rose for the version of me that spent a lifetime believing love and loyalty were the same thing. I let it go. We watched until the red vanished beneath the tide. When family turns into strangers, who do you become to survive?